So joining us this morning to break all of this down is Sacramento State professor Hannah Gabriel. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So I understand that tariffs are a tax, but what do you think is the greatest misconception that people have about tariffs right now?
Yeah, so tariffs are absolutely a tax. They are a tax on imported goods. The largest misconception when it comes to tariffs is who ends up paying the tariff. You know, people always say that consumers pay more. That's true, but they are not actually paying the tariff itself. So the tax is levied at the point of entry into the United States, for example. So it's going to be paid by the importer, whether it's a wholesaler, a retail storefront, or even a private individual trying to import a good. And so that's who pays it. That's the largest misconception. And that tariff is then collected as revenue by the government.
And so there's a lot of talk about, as you mentioned, prices going up and it ultimately affecting consumers. Explain for people how that trickle down happens in the simplest form. I know it's much more complicated than we would have time for this morning.
Of course. So when an importer, so say for example a storefront, has to pay more to import the same good that they, had imported, last year maybe for a cheaper price, any firm, storefront, whomever is going to want to then kind of allow that price increase to be passed on to consumers, kind of to avoid paying more costs. It increases profit margins, of course, if you pass on those costs directly to consumers. Maybe it's not the entirety of the tariff, maybe it's a large percentage of it. Either way, that ends up as a price increase that's faced by everyday people when they're just trying to go to the store.
Are there certain goods that are more likely to be more expensive, and do you maybe foresee that some goods just may no longer be imported into the U.S.?
So right now there's a lot of uncertainty. Unfortunately, things keep changing, and that uncertainty in and of itself does influence consumer behavior. Sure. It makes it hard to know when to purchase something or, what prices are going to look like in the future. And nobody likes uncertainty about prices or anything. Yeah. But what we've seen historically and from President Trump's first term is an increase in the tariffs on steel and aluminum. And so what has happened in the last couple weeks is that those tariffs have either increased or the number of countries that they've applied those tariffs to has increased. What that means in plain speak basically is just that steel and metals are going to be more expensive. That's something that has been largely taxed or tariffed recently. What that does is that increases the price of anything that uses metal, not just buying metal itself, but construction, cars, anything in manufacturing that relies on imported or even domestic steel is going to see an increase in production costs.
As you mentioned, there is a lot of uncertainty. We do stories every day about the updates from Washington. What would be your advice to our viewers this morning and people who are watching and just wondering what should they do? Should they take some specific action? What would you say to them?
That is unfortunately a very difficult question to answer. I guess the tariffs that we know exist, the ones on metal and things like that, a good piece of advice would be if you're going to buy, say, an appliance or anything that has, metal as an input, maybe look at purchasing it sooner rather than later. When it comes to the other industries that have kind of been going back and forth with or being deferred, it's very hard to say whether or not you should purchase something now.
Sure. Okay, everyone just has to continue watching KCRA 3. We'll, of course, keep you updated. Thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.